Continuing with this month's Halloween event, today we're talking about a version of Batman who hails from another Earth, a Batman devoid of life, an undead Batman affected by vampires. Yes, Vampire Batman. Let's talk about him. First, thanks for watching JLS Comics. Hit that subscribe button so you can keep up with all of our weekly content. With that out of the way, let's jump into our Vampire Batman story. Created by Doug Munch and Kelly Jones, this trilogy takes place over 3 Elseworlds graphic novels, Red Rain, Bloodstorm, and Crimson Mist. The Batman of this time in the main continuity was already dark and edgy with a propensity for violence and an affinity for the grim and gritty. It was a post-Frank Miller Dark Knight and Year One world, a world with gothic influences, heavy shading, and inking tones that bled through the book's panels. Jones and Munch themselves would, in and around this time, also work on the larger Batman Nightfall story where Bane broke Batman's back and the violent Azrael took the mantle for a time. Jones worked on Sandman while Neil Gaiman and Doug Munch worked on things like Moon Knight and Deathlock at Marvel Comics, while also giving us Batman vs. Predator and Batman vs. Spawn later in the 90s, so that should give you an idea of the talent, direction, and tone that this Vampire Batman collaborative undertaking would go. The foreword in the first part of the trilogy, written by author Eric Van Lustbader, pondered the implications of this new Batman story and whether or not it was true to Batman himself. He writes, "For as long as I have been reading Batman, I have always wondered if this mythical character, so powerful, so charismatic, played a role in the creation of Batman. For after all, though Batman is and always has been a champion of justice, his has been a cruel justice, one of fear and intimidation and dark vengeance. Bruce Wayne's original mandate was nothing less than to strike fear into the hearts of all criminals." In this dour Earth-43 world, this grave and morose Gotham City, vampires had invaded the seedy underbelly of Gotham, led by the king of vampires himself, Dracula. In the opening panels, Dracula fed on a prostitute as a nighttime Gotham took a bath in a red rain, a downpour awash in chemicals. And as Batman slept at Wayne Manor, a female haunted Batman's dreams. The image of her bloody corpse laid out on an abandoned sofa in an alley off Hop Street, playing in his mind as the images swirled against the red, misty murk of mental vagary. For 3 nights in a row, 3 throats were slashed, ripped to their death rattle. But it was worse. 19 throat slashings had occurred right under the watch of Commissioner Gordon and Mayor Woods, Gotham's first black mayor. And again, while Batman slept and dreamt, this red mist-like female wafted through his moonlit window and hovered above the slumbering Bruce Wayne. Ethereal and mystical, Bruce was frozen as he watched her float away, her haunting red lips imprinting on Bruce's psyche. The following evening, as Batman went out to wage his war on crime, he felt different, emboldened, empowered by that female soul of night. He was closer to the dark now than ever before. He was, Bruce mused, a shred of darkness come to life. In Greyfields, Batman encountered a bloodthirsty and demonic lady, her face and lips a river of fresh blood from her latest kill. She was slight of frame but powerful, and a couple of blows from her clawed hands later brought Batman to his knees, and she fled into the shadows of the concrete jungle around him. Batman chased her to a courtyard that was a dead end. He didn't know where she went, so Batman went back to the victim on the ground and found bite marks on her neck. Victim number 20. Another night and another encounter with the blood mist wraith who whispered to him, "Vampires are real, but not all are evil." Then Batman was having trouble facing the light of dawn. To bring himself out of the shadows, and more, he was finding his strength vastly increased, so he went to Dr. Church to get his blood tested. He then consulted an occult researcher named Ariane as he tried to figure out what was happening. "I need information about vampire lore," he told her. Under the stinging red rain and flashes of lightning, Batman made his way through a storm drain to the underbelly of Gotham. And, as above, so below, Batman ran into the undead. Batman was overcome by their numbers and nearly succumbed to them when a squadron of vampire hunters showed up and shot the skeletal vampires down with wooden stake weapons. This is when Batman met the lady who had haunted his dreams. This is when Batman meets a good vampire named Tanya. And as soon as Tanya appeared with her hunters, a vile monster also appeared, held aloft on fear and tattered wings to fight Tanya and Batman. This was Dracula. After Dracula cut Batman with his clawed hand, they held an intense standoff, a cross with Batman's blood smeared on the stone wall behind Batman until the light of dawn encroached on their battleground and Dracula was forced to retreat back into the dark. Again, Tanya came to Batman as he rested. This time, they talked and she told him of Dracula, that the Lord of the Undead intended to harvest Gotham. Later, after meeting with Commissioner Gordon, Batman collapsed after having lost too much blood, and as he lay unconscious, Tanya and her disciples were forced to give Batman a blood transfusion. And so, with that, Batman was now a vampire. A horrific and terrifying prospect for anyone, but it gave Batman the strength to fight the vampires, and indeed he did. He took out a handful of them, staking them in the heart to protect his friend. Meanwhile, Dracula kidnapped Commissioner Gordon, and so this newly born, strengthened, and emboldened Batman went out into the night to confront Dracula and his Legion of the Night. Batman led Dracula's forces right into a barrage of wooden stakes fired by Tanya and her others. but there were so many left. Batman led them into the caves under Wayne Manor, right into his trap. And as dawn beat back the blackness of night and the sun crept over the horizon, Batman blew up the caves with pre-planted explosives, exposing Dracula's vampires to the light, a brightness piercing the netherworld. Most of the vampires burned, and then Tanya and Dracula fought as Batman then crawled into a capsule, a tomb of protection, as he blew up the rest of Wayne Manor, his home collapsing down upon his second home, and it was all destroyed, all of it crushed in a pit of blackness as Tanya and Dracula disappeared. In the brownstone that Bruce and Alfred took up residence in after the destruction of Wayne Manor, Bruce took off his shirt and revealed his giant wings. A gift from Tanya, he said. A Batman now, not just in symbolism and iconography, but in truth. Batman wasn't done though. Dracula still had Commissioner Gordon, now strung up in his keep as he slowly drained the Commissioner of blood. This was a stone Gaudi spire in Gotham protected by a swirling, circling mass of rabid bats. Batman, though, made it into the stronghold, freeing Gordon and fighting Dracula with his fists and his silver batarangs. Then, impaled with a trio of silver weapons, Dracula's blood began to boil inside him. The two foes took to the blood-red airspace over Gotham, their wings flapping against the crimson mist as they continued their battle in the scarlet sky. Batman then stabbed Dracula with more silver, and Dracula fell out of the sky and impaled himself through the heart on a stake made from a massive dead oak tree. There, before the Dark Knight himself, Dracula burned to ash and bone. Devoid of energy, Batman collapsed, and so Alfred was the sole heir of the Wayne fortune. What happened though was that Batman lay in his coffin beneath a newly rebuilt Wayne Manor. Still Batman, still a defender of Gotham, but now an undead Caped Crusader. For as Tanya said, vampires are real, but not all of them are evil. The middle part of the trilogy was a graphic novel entitled Batman Bloodstorm. In the Bloodstorm preface, it's written that Bloodstorm works as a tale of terror worthy of a place beside its inspiration, the original Dracula, and is a parable of the battle each of us must wage with our own souls. So Batman, still a vampire himself, continued to wage his war and inflict his dark justice on evil. He, winged and cloaked himself, complete with fangs and long spindly ears on his black cowl, framing a scowl worthy of Frank Miller's Dark Knight. And as he took down criminal after criminal, his thirst for blood grew. At the same time, the Joker found his way to the last remaining vampire nest in Gotham and proclaimed himself their new leader. The Joker sent his vampires out to conscript, to bite, and take over other factions. One of them even ripped the face off a mob boss with his teeth. Joker called him the Arterial Decorator. After an undead mob boss taunted Batman with his thirst for blood, Batman took a silver spear encased in oak wood and impaled him right through the heart, and then took an axe and removed his head from his body. Back in Gotham, a lady named Miss Selina Kyle was chased by Mr. Creech, who changed into a werewolf and bit Selina on the arm. Selina then jumped in a river and swam to the other side, saved by the barrier that running water provided for her, for the undead were unable to cross such flowing bodies of water. Batman then battled with the undead at a strip club owned by the recently turned Manny the Shark, and discovered the endangered girls and Joker's connection to it all. And while he was there, Selina Kyle turned into a purple cat creature, and when she went out for revenge on Mr. Creech, she ran right into Batman along the rooftops and vents forming the skyline of Gotham. But they quickly realized they weren't like the others, so they ceased their battle, and Selina left after telling Batman her true name. Batman then went back to Ariane the occultist, who said Selina was akin to Lon Chaney's The Wolfman from 1940. Ariana said there were myths of selfless women who could free a vampire from the curse. So back at Wayne Manor, Batman's thirst for blood was growing to be too much, so he sent Alfred away as he bit off the head of a rat. And nearly overcome, Batman turned to Selina Kyle for help. In her presence, Batman's urge for blood was abated. Together they took out the vampire nest that was feeding on nightclub dancers, and then staked the two dancers who they'd been feeding on before they too turned. The pair then went back to Selina's to rest while Gordon and Alfred went around in the daylight staking vampires in their coffins. That left just the Joker in one last nest, holed up under Gotham's parish of the Rosy Cross, for Batman and Catwoman to attack. Selina ripped Creech's heart right out of his werebody, and as Joker was about to shoot Batman with a wooden bolt fired from a crossbow, Selina jumped in front of it, sacrificing herself to save Batman. The long night was good while it lasted, she said as the last bit of life escaped her body. Batman then snapped Joker's neck with a single blow and gave into his thirst, feeding on the Joker's neck as Joker's last laugh rattled the rafters of the old church. Batman stabbed Joker in the heart with a stake before he turned and then crashed through a stained glass window, escaping out into the cold night air outside. Bruce then wrote a letter to Alfred and Gordon saying he'd failed and to stake him while he was slumbering, and together, eyes pooling with tears, Gordon and Alfred staked Batman in the heart to save him from himself. In Batman Crimson Mist, the staked, decaying corpse of Batman lay in solitude, resting in his tomb, but he wasn't dead. Yet with Batman gone, the criminals of Gotham rose. Scarecrow, Killer Croc, Two-Face, Poison Ivy, Penguin all took advantage of the new power vacuum. In desperation, Alfred went down to the tomb and removed the stake from Batman, bringing him back to unlife. Batman was angry because they failed to take his head. Batman then turned into a crimson mist and floated outside to enact his own brand of justice on those criminals who'd risen up in his wake. He ripped Penguin's jugular out with his fangs, fed on the Riddler, sliced Scarecrow in half, ate Poison Ivy's throat, and killed tons of others, and then posted their heads up outside Blackgate Penitentiary, evoking the same terrifying imagery that Vlad Tepes did with his victims before he became Dracula. Batman's crimson mist form then glided through Arkham Asylum, murdering everybody in their cells until there was nothing but silence in the asylum. As Batman's horror grew and his kill count rose, Alfred and Gordon were forced to pair up with Two-Face and Killer Croc to stop Batman, for when his last criminal victim fell, where would Batman turn next? Dracula's curse and Joker's evil were quickly taking over control of Batman's conscience. In the repurposed Batcave, Gordon shot Batman in the back with a wooden bolt from his crossbow as Killer Croc struck Batman and Batman fell down into a seemingly bottomless pit. Batman managed to crawl out of the pit, and Alfred sacrificed himself to give Batman the strength to take down Croc and Two-Face. Batman impaled Croc in the chest and then stabbed Two-Face with a stake that Gordon shot at him right through both of Two-Face's temples. He forced Gordon to blow the cave again with some high explosives, and Gordon too died, crushed by a boulder. And in Batman's final act of good, Batman walked into the searing light of day and he melted, turning to dust and ash, burned by the sun and finally at peace. And thus closed out the trilogy. That Gothic trilogy was not the first story of vampires in Batman's lore. For example, in a story from 1982, Dick Grayson was on a date with a lady named Dala who turned him to a vampire. And Dala then used her new dick pawn to get Batman outside, and when he's outside, a vampire named the Monk attacked Batman in the ice-cold rain of an inky black night and bit Batman's throat. And so in that story, Batman became a vampire. So Batman went to a priest named Father Green, and the priest helped Batman make a serum to cure both Batman and Robin. Batman Nosferatu was released in 1999 as the second part of an Expressionism-inspired Elseworld trilogy that included both Superman's Metropolis and Wonder Woman, the Blue Amazon. A villain named Dr. Arkham was using his Laughing Man to kill people in Metropolis, one of whom was Dirk Grayson. To protect the city, Batman was changed by the sentient computers that laid at the heart of Metropolis into a protector of night, into Nosferatu. This is inspired by Count Orlok, aka Nosferatu, the star of 1922's silent German expressionist horror film, which itself is an adaptation of the tale of Bram Stoker's Dracula. In the end, it was agreed upon that Superman would defend in the light, while Batman Nosferatu would do the same in the night. In 2007, Kelly Jones revisited the Crimson Mist trilogy world in the DC Infinite Halloween special book with a story called Red Rain Bloodlust. The Red Rain Batman was somehow still alive, perhaps reset after Infinite Crisis. In 2007's Justice Society of America series, an illusion of the Batman of the Multiverse appeared. This included Silver Age Batman, the Batman from 1966, The Dark Knight, and Vampire Batman. And again, we see Earth 43 in the search for Ray Palmer, Red Rain, which is part of the countdown to Final Crisis. In the search for Ray to prevent the Sourcefall disaster, the Challengers wound up on the Red Rain Earth 43 and right in the hunting grounds of the new vampire lord, Batman. Then the Monarch captured Vampire Batman in Countdown Arena and forced him to fight Earth 19 and Earth 40 Batman. Earth 19 Batman impaled Vampire Batman with 2 knives, stabbed right into his eyes before Vampire Bats bit the throat of the 2 Batmen, and he almost killed them before Monarch said he was now part of his personal army. In 2015, Earth 43 was back during an event called Multiversity. This story featured a vampire roster of the Justice League, now calling themselves the Blood League. And the Blood League wanted to invade Adam Strange's holdworld of Rann, but the sorcerer, Anataz, which is Zatanna backwards, redirected their thirst to coffee. Yep, good old Grant Morrison with that one. 2015's Convergence Swamp Thing pitted Vampire Batman from Red Rain against Swamp Thing until they decided to team up with each other to take down Gotham's Vampire Queen. Swamp Thing helped take down the Vampire Queen's handmaidens, which freed Gotham of its curse, and then Batman and Swamp Thing greeted the rising sun, killing Batman and returning Swamp Thing and Abbey Arcane to their home. In 2018's Dark Knights Rising: The Wild Hunt, as heroes battled Barbatos's Dark Knights, they passed through various Earths by way of the Bleed and passed through Earth 43, giving us a brief glimpse of Vampire Batman screaming at the Red Rain. In the Terrifics, Mr. Terrific was chasing down Java, and they passed through Earth 43, though our only glimpse of Vampire Batman is on a screen of Mr. Terrific's ship. Vampire Batman appeared in person in Justice League 26, as the heroes of various Earths were called to the House of Heroes. Flash said to Green Lantern not to get close to that Earth 43 guy because he's a little bitey. 2019's Secrets of Sinister House revisited Vampire Batman with a story called Nightmare Mist. There, Vampire Batman fought with Talon to prevent him from abducting a little girl for the Court of Owls. Batman sliced off Talon's head and returned the girl to her bed, her dad saying it was nothing but a nightmare. In Scott Lobdell's Flash Forward miniseries, Wally West was tasked by Tempest Fugonaut with purging dangerous multiversal matter from different worlds to prevent reality from corroding into oblivion. And so Wally wound up on Earth 43 and in a vampire overrun Gotham City. It was here that Wally also ran into a vampire Superman in the Justice League of Vampires. He confronted vampiric versions of Barry Allen and teamed up with vampire hunter Arsenal. Wally and Arsenal broke into the Batcave and there battled Vampire Batman. And Flash vibrated Vampire Batman into the heart of a nuclear reactor and trapped him there. The one who died in this story was Earth 43 Arsenal. He also briefly appeared in James Tynion IV's Dark Knight's death metal Multiverse's End, as Perpetua had positioned a tuning fork in Vampire Batman's Gotham to reshape the metaverse to her will, one of 6 Earths remaining in the entire multiverse. Green Batman of the Rainbow Batman Corps attacked Vampire Batman, biting him with his power ring construct. And that is the comic book version of Vampire Batman. And now, in the throes of a haunting Halloween month, we await the first issue of James Tynion IV's DC vs. Vampires to see what fate will befall our Batman and Justice League as they battle a secret army of vampires. In the animated Batman the Brave and the Bold, Batman was bitten by a vampire and turned, and then proceeded to turn the Justice League members like Beetle, Aquaman, Martian Manhunter, and Booster Gold into vampires too. The twist at the end of the film is that Batman was bitten, but the rest was a hallucination. In Justice League Gods and Monsters, a former Man-Bat turned Batman, Kirk Langstrom, bit Harley Quinn and turned her as her blood splattered over a Home Sweet Home sign. Kirk Batman was taking down Gotham's criminals by biting them and draining them of their blood, and murdering them before GCPD could remand them to Arkham Asylum, Belle Reve, or Blackgate. And I'll leave you with this. The Batman Beyond animated series was made possible due to the popularity of the Buffy the Vampire Slayer show. And in that show, there was an episode called Splicers, where people were splicing human DNA with animal DNA and creating new animalistic and terrifying creatures. And it's here that Chimera captured Batman Beyond and injected him with a vampire bat serum, and Terry McGinnis was transformed. At the end, Chimera was also transformed, and following a fight with Batman Beyond and Ace, Chimera perished in an explosion. And then Terry was changed back to human by Old Man Bruce. And with that, that's a wrap on this one, my friends. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and you'll be one of the first to know when I upload videos just like this every week. I'm Jesse, this is JLS Comics, and I'll see you soon.